So off the back of an Android 16 update that was fairly small by most standards, One UI 8.5 is now available in its beta phase for selected Samsung smartphones, and here are some of the biggest and best new features. I have to say, it's modest, but I do think it's still a very nice, tidy little update. One UI gang though, I need you to do me a solid first and hit that subscribe button, as we are on the road to 400,000 subscribers. Every little helps, and I'll be eternally grateful if you join the crew. Cheers. So following on from Google, Samsung is now adding a fully customizable quick settings panel. I'm loving this so far in One UI 8.5. It's a little bit of a step between what you can do on Pixel with some elements of iOS, as is always the case, folded in here. I do think it's not clear if things will stay the same on new hardware or when the stable update rolls out, but after installing One UI 8.5, you are greeted with a compact 4-button layout. It looks like it's broken, but you can start building on that right away. The UI for adding new toggles, it does mimic the layout and categorization that we've found on Pixels over the past few months since Material 3 Expressive was added, which I do think makes it easier to start building functional quick settings panels that suit you. The add a control button is also easy to reach, it's less confusing and it helps you get started. Toggles can be added, expanded and adjusted with small expansion tabs showing that you can do that. Sections can be moved around to suit your own preferences, so it's not as rigid as it was before. It's a very big improvement over the previous layout in One UI 8 and One UI 7. I do think one of the best changes though is how sliders work here, because you're able to customize the layout of these so you can set brightness or volume sliders to be portrait, which is useful, or landscape if you want that, which I do think is great for accessibility, reachability, and I really love this change from Samsung, which is why we've got it out of the way up top. Play around with it, you can find that perfect layout that will suit your phone and your own personal preferences. Another really cool feature in One UI 8.5 is that it is adding a true power user feature for screen recording, because now you're able to record just a portion of your display, saving time editing or cropping later on. I think this could be really useful if you have a foldable device and are using something split screen, for instance. It should also work in DeX mode, making it even better, or a better tool for anyone who uses their phone in this desktop orientation, as your screen can be better organized and therefore makes it easier for you to record a certain section, not have to, again, crop in post or use another piece of software to get the section that you want cropped down and available to share or do whatever you want with it. You might also notice that there are more floating search bars and control tabs on your phone if you update to this One UI 8.5 beta. This is technically part of Material 3 Expressive control schema, as it undocks some options from that bottom bar, but it does aid reachability in places like the Settings app or the app drawer. I have to say, it looks a little bit like what iOS is doing with Liquid Glass, although that's technically the see-through element. So yeah, it's just floating windows. I'm putting this down to Material 3 Expressive, but I know some people are saying that this looks like Liquid Glass. I'm not so sure, but yeah, there are some elements that we can't deny do look a little bit like iOS. So instead of needing to swipe up or stretch to the top of your display to have or reach search boxes, they're now within millimeters of your fingertips. I think it takes a little bit of brain power to initially get used to, or at least to get used to something that has been the paradigm with One UI and Android for so long, but it's a significant change on larger screens and it does make things a lot easier, and I do like this change, I have to say. If you also care about being able to discern the current weather conditions when you wake up, you can now enable local conditions for your alarm backgrounds with One UI 8.5. While it's a subtle animation, it's not likely to be as obvious from your lock screen widget once you've shut off your alarm. I have to say, it is a nice touch either way, and I really like that Samsung is making these changes, at least to try and give you key information by integrating it into areas that we already use day to day. Sticking with customization though, Samsung's lock screen is getting a bit more automated with better detection now for subjects like pets and even objects like scenery, think a mountain or a building for instance. The clock UI that you see if you have the always on display enabled will adjust and move better, and it'll detect what the scene is and apply changes now by default. Move out of the way, make it more visible if possible. You don't need to mess around with the settings or placement manually now. At the start of this, you just get this blocking feature will work as intended. There are also a few more fonts available if you want to change it up, with that adapted font color also changing based upon the image you've chosen for the lock screen wallpaper by default. You can make changes and set this to a set color if you want to, but yeah, once you make changes, it will automatically update, and I think this is great changes for the lock screen. Not necessarily groundbreaking, but it does make it feel more like your own phone in more ways than one. Theft protection is also getting some extra protective features here in One UI 8.5 that have come over from the Pixel phone. So there is the enabled fail authentication lock function that you can have So if there are too many attempts of the fingerprint scan, PIN entries, or password, whatever it is, this should block your phone. So it doesn't prevent the fact that people may have access to your phone, but this is an additional layer of protection as part of that theft protection suite, which keeps evolving, which I do think you might want to enable. Again, if you're in a multi-person, multi-user household, might be useful to have on your phone. And while a little update did drop for the Samsung Weather application before this One UI 8.5 update that did add the pollen count feature back to the Samsung Weather app, for many people I think this will occur for the first time with this One UI 8.5 update. So we're highlighting it here regardless. I know it's a little bit of a cheat, but yes, if you're an allergy sufferer, you can track 3 types of pollen now in the Samsung Weather application: tree, grass, and ragweed pollen. While we can't speak for the accuracy of the data, it is powered by the Weather Channel, so it should mean fairly solid data points are used to generate this information. You can get a 3-day forecast for the pollen count in your area, which should be enough to at least help you make or take those safety precautions if you do need to take some sort of allergy medication. During the winter months though, like it is here in the UK, the data is less reliable due to the pollen count being lower at this time of year. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt, as it is at this point in time. It's probably not going to be useful to many of us in winter months. I think one really cool feature that's been added to the My Files app here is that you can now remotely access nearby device storage and preview or view files from your own phone. So storage share is something that you should use sparingly, I think, when out and about, but it is super useful if you have multiple phones or multiple tablets and can't remember where you saved something. I do this all the time because I switch phones quite a bit. The best thing here is that you don't need to have One UI 8.5 installed on the other phone or the tablet to access this feature and access any files. It just has to be a Samsung device. So you just accept the prompt that pops up on that other device, and then you can start browsing and viewing files. Again, I would say proceed with caution if you have sensitive stuff on your Galaxy phone. That said, it will be great, as I noted, if you have lots of Samsung hardware and do forget where you save things. Samsung hasn't fully overhauled the camera application this time with One UI 8.5, but the Pro mode has a really nice option. I wanted to highlight this because it is enabling you now to remove some of the distractions that you might see, like the EV count, ISO, the autofocus settings that you've toggled, and the white balance. You just use a little toggle here that just makes this disappear from your viewfinder. It works in the Pro video mode too, so you won't have things obscuring your view for a clean experience, and it allows you to snap that perfect shot or record that perfect video. Oddly, we have to note as well that single take and dual recording are missing in this first beta. This is likely going to be corrected come the full release, or we hope it is, but it is weird that Samsung will remove or disable some features here in One UI 8.5. Maybe they're testing or playing with that, but yes, if they are missing for you and you do use these features all the time, might not be worth updating. If you happen to use AI editing features with the Galaxy AI suite, there are also important changes here in One UI 8.5 to make things a little bit better, a little bit easier. Firstly, you don't need to save your photos each time you've made a change, which I really like. Instead, you can make multiple edits back to back like you would with Photoshop, for instance. Plus, you now have a timeline to go back and revert or restore changes if you need to or you want to, or the edit isn't quite what you wanted. This is really good if you want to completely reimagine an image and clean things up, as you don't need to have lots of working copies saved on your device. Instead, you can do it all from one file, which I really do like this change, especially if you are someone who's obsessed with AI editing. This might be really useful to you. If you do use Now Brief on your phone, you are able to disable the audio brief toggle that appears in the top right of the AI powered section here in One UI 8.5. Tapping this, if you didn't already know, if you didn't know what this feature did, gives you a robotic AI voice rundown of everything that you can see. So I do have to say it might be pointless to many of you. So all you need to do to disable this is just go to settings, lock screen and AOD, and the now bar option. You should have the option to disable this. I recommend doing it right away, to be honest, as I've toggled it multiple times. I'm like, why is my phone talking to me? I don't want to hear this because I can read it on my screen. Yeah, really nice to see this as an option, as it, although Now Brief isn't the best out there, it is, again, nice to see Samsung giving us options to how we use certain features that they've shoehorned in over the past couple of years. So those are some of the headline additions to One UI 8.5, or the first beta of One UI 8.5, which should bring Galaxy phones up to date in the coming months and weeks. We don't actually know the time frame for this, but yeah, I want to ask you, what do you think so far? This isn't the most extensive list, there are some other options, but these are the headline additions we think you need to know about, or the key ones. Personally, I have to say I've fallen in love with One UI. I've said it here on the channel before, since One UI 7 was introduced, and I do think this is another step in the right direction as far as Samsung is differentiating itself from others out there, and as far as I'm concerned. Maybe I would have liked a little bit more Material 3 Express if they be shoehorned in, but I guess Samsung wants to do something a little bit different. Let me know what you think down in the comment sections below. Cheers for watching. Hopefully this has given you some insight into what One UI 8.5 brings to the table. But until next time, I'll speak to you later.